For today's Anarcho Feminist Martial Arts film review, I'm going to be doing The Legend. If you sense any derisiveness about me saying that, it's really about the title, which I will go into a bit later. Yeah, it's funny because I first watched this film when I'd had a pew. I was drinking sloe gin from a black bottle. You can't see how much you're drinking, and sloe gin goes down so very quickly and easily. It's amazing. So yeah, and when I first watched it, I thought it was really silly. And I'm just, but when I actually watched it when I was sober, because I wanted to review it, I realised that it wasn't quite as silly as I thought. Nothing like as silly as I thought, in fact. I mean, it is quite light-hearted, it is quite comedy, but it was a lot better than I thought it was. I'm just saying that for the approximately 5 people watching who saw me posting about it on Instagram 2 years ago. I don't really know why I was posting, other than I'd had a few, and I said something about, oh, it's a very silly film going on in the background, very silly. I'm really drunk, but I still think it's really silly. It must be really, really silly. So for the benefit of those people watching who saw me say that, oh, God, I actually quite like that, because I know that if somebody kind of disses a film I like or something I like, I tend to be a little bit embarrassed about it. But it's fine. It's actually fine. Don't worry about it. I don't think you're stupid if you like this, because it is actually pretty good. So, or I wouldn't think you were. So, right, to start with, now what I liked about this film. Now, this is it's going to be a bit of a, there's a bit of a format for this. I'm going to start with what I liked about the film, mostly, and then I will talk a little bit about the sort of revolutionary aspect of it, because it's actually a little bit more nuanced than it appears on the surface, and I really wanted to discuss that a little bit more than it appears to be in the film. There's also, even while drunk, I did kind of notice some bad lesbian tropes and some domestic abuse, and so I'm going to get all SJW on your asses, and I'm not going to say ruin this film for you. I still think it's a really good film, and actually, although I will be talking about the bad lesbian tropes and the domestic abuse quite a lot, I'll do that at the end. And yeah, it's still a really good film, and they don't really dominate that much. It was just like there were bits that came up that I felt really needed addressing. But before I get into that kind of lengthy discussion, I will talk a little bit about the kind of niggling little things that I thought were a bit kind of annoying or ridiculous. So, right, so start with things I actually quite liked about this film. First of all, very satisfying amount of fighting in this. I quite enjoyed all the fighting. Some films, you know, they kind of maybe over-rely on the fighting and it's not very good, but this was pretty good, and, you know, they were good length, and they didn't, like, get boring or repetitive or anything like that. That was pretty good, and, you know, the story kind of rattles on at a reasonable pace, so it all kind of coheres in a way, you know, so that it's not merely, you know, a way to get from one fight to another. You know, the scenes in between aren't just a way to get from one fight to another. They're actually, you know, it all kind of hangs together really well. So that's quite pleasing. And like I said, it is quite funny and light-hearted. And another thing I liked about it is that, aside from Fong Sai-yuk, this character played by Jet Li, the most prominent fighters were with him. His mother and his future mother-in-law. Oh, this is going to be spoiler-tastic, by the way. If you don't want to be spoilered up, go and watch it first. But anyway, I can't be bothered with worrying about spoilers. So yeah, the women are most prominent in this, which I quite like, and they're better than their husbands as well, which I also quite like, obviously. Uh, I think that I quite liked the sort of story of a sort of local revolutionary band kind of thing. It was, so kind of what happens is that there's the emperor has a bad dream, like emperors do, because they're all bad and they brutally oppress people, so they get paranoid, and then he sends for his best assassin and sends them after local revolutionaries, which turns out to be his father's group. And the it's really just like a light skirmishing kind of thing. It's not exploring grand themes or anything necessarily, or that well anyway. But I also really liked the relationship between Fong So-yuk and his mother. It seems sort of very warm and close, and it's sort of so close that they work well together when fighting. They fight other people. They're almost like connected. I mean, obviously there's going to be like some fiddling around with choreography, so they do like certain moves at the same time. But it's pretty good. I really liked that, and I mean, she's definitely his mother. Yeah, he's kind of immature, but she's quite a lot of fun as well, and quite clever. And I just found that really good. And they kind of know each other so well that it's like there's this point at the end where he lies to her, gets the family servant to lie to her as well about what he's up to, because what he's really going to go and do is rescue his father from being executed, and so that she wouldn't come along and potentially be in danger too. But she sees through that completely and then turns up and helps out, and it's all rather lovely. So it's all kind of warm. There's a very sort of warm, close family relationship there. It's pretty good. I really liked that. I'm going to talk a bit more about the Red Flag Brotherhood. I quite liked the fact that it was. So whenever they talk about what they're doing, they always say, "We're fighting for China. We're fighting for the people of China." And now it always kind of sounds like what they're saying is they want the Hans back. They want rid of the Manchus and they want the Hans back. That's what it always seems like they're saying throughout the film. But I kind of like that from the point of view of they don't. There's no sort of counter argument to that other than, well, we don't care, kind of thing. So like in Hero, which is one of my all-time favourite martial arts films, it's right up there with the Kill Bill films and Lady Snowblood as far as I'm concerned. That basically, like, the one thing that I really do not like about Hero is that it's not just that the assassins always wuss out about killing the Emperor when they get to the point where they can do that. That's not the reason that really upsets me. What really bugs me is the reason that they do that. And it's kind of like, it's all about like, oh, China, yes, it's united in blood by oppressing people. But if they weren't united, they'd all be warring factions and everything would be just so much worse. And it's just like, it just jars so much, especially when you look at what China is doing today, what is happening in China today. So it's like they occupy Tibet, they've occupied it for decades, and sure, once it was part of the territory, but at some point they won their autonomy. But now China is occupying it again, and they call the Dalai Lama a splittist, and it's a kind of derogatory term for someone who just wants to split up the great Republic of China, the grand country of China, which is because, like, as far they like to say, the whole is better than the sum of its parts, and China is so much better if it's all together, but if it's all split into pieces, into like different smaller countries, basically, then they'll all just be warring and they won't work as well. And so we're brutally oppressing you for your own good, and that really, really annoys me. And and it's their excuse for occupying Tibet, and it's also their excuse for like the the oppression of the Uyghurs, the Muslim Uyghur population. There's about 1 million of them, the UN reckon, that are currently interned in some camps where they're being educated or re-educated or whatever, and it's basically cultural genocide. They're trying to force their culture and their ethnicity out of them by making them into like the rest of the Chinese, and it's a really horrific thing that they're doing to them. I mean, they kill them too, but there's an awful lot of them that have just been interned, and it's awful, and they using that sort of way for that's the excuse that they're always using, and it's kind of the excuse for what's happening in Hong Kong right now with the it was always kind of dodgy to expect the one country two systems thing to work in the long run, and 20 years down the line it's sort of hardly surprising that now you've got large protests where there's horrendous things happening, and the police working in tandem with the triads and stuff like that. It's it's not surprising, and it's this is the kind of excuse that China always gives. So I don't. So that is why the reason for that. Those assassins. I mean, it was Jet Li, in fact, but a bit older then. In as the nameless one in Hero, and and they all just wuss out about it, and that's the reason, because they're afraid of what China will become, what the people of China will be. It just annoys me so much. But I feel like there's actually something a little bit more nuanced going on here. Okay, so it does kind of bug me a little bit that quite a lot of the time when they're saying we're fighting for China, it's great that they're just saying that. But they're kind of saying we want the Hans back, we don't want the Manchus. So it's kind of replacing one brutal emperor for another, really. But interesting thing, at the beginning, when the emperor's having his bad dream, where he dreams this assassin is coming to kill him, this assassin says to him in his dream, "You are a Han, but you rule as a Manchu." Now, obviously this is like something that's said to the emperor in a dream, but I'm sure he was a Han ruling as a Manchu, and that's kind of what the state of things have tended to be, and he's kind of, it wouldn't surprise me at all. I haven't looked into it historically, but, I'm sure that was actually what was happening, and this was kind of, part of the beef that some people might have had with him. But the interesting thing is, at the end, that assassin that came to the emperor in his dream turns up at the end when Feng Soyuk's father is about to be executed and helps with the rescue and stuff. And then in the end, Feng Soyuk goes off with Chan. Chan says, "Oh, you're a great fighter, you should come with me and I can teach you more." So what's happening at the end there is that Feng Soyuk is going with his bride, with this man who probably thinks that a Han emperor is probably going to be no better than a Manchu emperor. So you kind of got to wonder, well, what is his plan for revolution? I mean, they're still going to be doing some sort of revolution, presumably involved in revolutionary activities. So what if he's not going to replace with a Manchu emperor with a Han emperor, or maybe even another emperor? Well, what's going to be the ultimate aim of this? And it's left very open-ended because it's not something that's really explored properly in the film. But I do think it's quite an interesting way of it's this sort of very subtle thing that's underlying it, and I think it's very interesting, and it could be explored in a future film, you never know. So that's kind of what I liked about it, the interesting things that I liked about it. Now some niggly bits. Okay, I'll start with the title. Okay. Legend is a massively overused word in kung fu films, and in this case, the legend, it doesn't say much about what happens in the film. I mean, it's not like he's like the guy in Kung Fu Hustle, where, you know, he turns out to be some great super martial artist being who's the child of two other great martial artists, and he's the only one who can like save China from this evil martial artist who's been shut up in prison for years or anything like that. It's it's not like that. Like I said, it's basically just kind of local skirmishing, really. And at the end, it's kind of open ended as to whether or not it leads anywhere. So I think it the legend is not a very helpful title, and it's the word is just really overused. I don't think it's a great one. Yeah, it's something like the Red Flower Brotherhood would have been better. You know, it would have said a lot more about what actually was going on in the film. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they just didn't like, maybe Chinese government didn't like the idea of that as a name. I don't know, maybe it just had too many connotations of revolution and stuff like that. But I do think, yeah, that's a bad title. They could have done better with that. There's another thing that I'm not too keen on. Okay, the governor, like the governor himself, right? So he's this assassin, and actually the emperor says, "Call the assassin," and then there's the next thing you see is this young man who's being evil at some people, some blacksmith in a quarry or something. And the thing is that he's really good at being evil. He's nicely dressed as well. Gotta love a nicely dressed evil person, I always think. And he does all that really. He's very good at does the fighting really well. I quite like that. Problem is he's really quite young, but he is a governor apparently. That's what's he's referred to in the film as a governor. And you know, first of all, governor is a political appointment, and you'd kind of expect a governor to have some years on him. He's literally just like a few years older than Fong So-yuk, who you can see is quite young there. I don't feel like he's old enough to be in a position like governor. And the other thing is that you know, he's an assassin. He's going out chasing down this Brotherhood of the Red Flower, this red army, this revolutionary army. And it's a bit seems a bit ridiculous to think that a governor would go doing that. I mean, it's not like it would be ridiculous for a governor to be good at martial arts and to be capable of doing the things that he does. It's just that a governor is a political appointment, and he has a specific job, and his job is not normally to go chasing down revolutionaries. So he usually has people that he tells to do that for him. And so I kind of found that a little bit strange. So that was just that's just a little bit of a niggly thing. A next thing that I wasn't too keen on was that to start right sort of near the beginning of the film, after the Emperor's had his bad dream, we have this point where Fong So-yuk meets this very lovely young lady at a sports event that's been put on by the local rich bigwig. And he gets into a fight because some other people are harassing this young lady, and then gets put in prison for a little bit, and then gets let out a bit later. But it's but then you see, it turns out. But then you see, the thing is, this lovely young lady is actually the daughter of this local bigwig guy who's been annoying lots of people because he's rather corrupt. He's in with the local powerful people, and he's getting all his money and his power by cozying up to these people and doing what they want. So, but he wants to kind of make himself seem better to the villagers, and that's why he'd been putting on this sports event. And then he has this sort of strange conversation with his advisor who, and his advisor does this thing of massaging his ego. This local bigwig, he's called Tiger Lou, and he's very kind of self-aggrandising. He's kind of what you'd expect from a guy who's climbing a greasy pole, basically. But he's also not as clever as he thinks he is and stuff like that. So he has this advisor saying stuff to him, and he's, yes, that's a very great idea I just had. It's sort of so ridiculous. But anyway, so then this advisor suggests that he has a tournament, a kung fu tournament for his daughter's hand in marriage to ingratiate himself with the local villagers. Okay, now if I have to explain to you what's wrong with that, you can fuck off. I just can't be bothered. But now the thing is, it's not so ridiculous that a man like Tiger Lou would put on a tournament like that, because he's obviously the kind of self-aggrandising fool who thinks it's fine to just hand his daughter out as a prize. So I think what I'm going to have to keep stressing, I guess, it's not when problematic things appear in films or whatever, it's how they're dealt with. And so it's not like it's something that's really out of character or ridiculous for that particular man to do, and he looks really silly doing it and stuff like that. But what kind of really bugs me about that is that this guy, he doesn't know anything about this daughter of this bigwig. He doesn't know that the woman he's met the night before is this daughter that he's fighting for. But I think it's just like he gets, I don't know if it's just immaturity or something, but he gets this his mates come along and say, hey, it's going to be a big tournament, you can win this, and he's like, oh, fight, which in some ways is fair enough, but he knows it's fighting to win the hand of a daughter of the local rich man in marriage, and I kind of feel very uncomfortable with the fact that he's been so blasé about going into that. And then he sort of compounded that by the way that he decided to lose the fight, and he willingly lost it because, not unreasonably, the daughter of Tiger Lou decides she doesn't really want to be involved in this, and she kind of slips away at some point during the tournament. When Tiger Lou discovers this, he kind of grabs the first young woman he sees and then puts a cloth over her head and puts her out on display. And then there's a point while Feng Soyuk is fighting, when the cloth gets pulled off this girl's head, and he takes one look at it and goes, oh, don't look at that, and loses the fight, which I just find really kind of ridiculous and annoying. And I know he's like a young man and he's just really immature and ridiculous, but that's kind of annoying too, that he's just basically basing whether or not he's prepared to lose a fight because he doesn't like the look of a girl. It's just ridiculous. And to just illustrate how ridiculous that is, how it's like when his mother is told that he lost that fight, she just like assumes that something funny happened, and so she goes to save the family honour by going and taking on that fight herself and winning. And so it's just like, so it's just like, it's so unusual for him to just lose a fight like that, and he just lost it because he didn't like the look of someone. It's really annoying. And but then he sort of compounds that even more later when so he's kind of later imprisoned by Tiger Lou in Tiger Lou's house, and he doesn't know that the woman he's supposed to be marrying is this woman that he'd met and had this fight over, and she doesn't know that he's the one that she's going to marry, she's supposed to be marrying. And actually, if they did know, they'd be really pleased about it, but they don't know, and they're sort of stalking around each other in the dark, and like she actually throws a knife at him at one point, which is quite funny. But they kind of like have this conversation with each other in the dark, not knowing who each other are, and he says, well, my heart belongs to another, I can't marry you. And he says that a few times before he discovers who she really is. So it's just like, okay, I wouldn't have really necessarily expected him to, totally fall for this woman because he's met her once. and then they've been involved in a fight and stuff like that. But apparently that is what happened. And yet he still went into this fight not knowing who this woman was that he was fighting for. It's just, that is just so annoying and wrong. And yeah, he's an immature boy and stuff, but I just... he didn't have to lose the fight for that reason. He could have lost it because his mother was in trouble, for example. He would have quite happily have lost a fight to go and help his mother. So it's just like, it's very grating that that's kind of how that one worked, really. Okay, so now we're going to get on to bad lesbian tropes in films. Okay, so this is, see, I was sort of quite pleased when I initially watched this to see that there was this lesbian subtext going on in this film. Because you don't normally see it very much. And
don't worry, it's right. My parents will be mad. Relax, I gave them false names. Yuri and Kwai.
The problem is that, as we see in this, I'll just fast forward it a little bit. Problem is, oh no, that's the wrong one. Let's go back to the menu. It's meant to be scene 6. Sorry, everyone. Okay, so I think we've got the right one now.
Look, it's starting. Look, look at that one. Wow, incredible. Although I am a newcomer here.
Yeah, okay, so I've cried out loud. No, it's not. It's actually scene 7. I'm going to try again. Sorry about this, everyone. Okay, so, see, I should have known from the picture here.
Just lost the kung fu match to a woman.
Your boy. But no one beats him in fights.
Yeah, so she's off to go and fight because she
those
thinks,
damn losers.
oh my god, there's something funny going on here. So she kind of mans up. She dresses up as a man, puts something on her head, and deepens her voice about half an octave or something, and she's a man!
There's a wager that says I can win this fight.
So I
Let's
kind
hear
of,
back, and I'll win for us all.
this kind of looks exciting to start with, and when I first saw this
Heroes.
particular scene, I actually was quite hopeful that this story play out in quite an interesting and nice way. So you see, it's already set up for them to be kind of a thing.
Let me see, huh? Huh? Should we? Huh?
Let's get something straight. I didn't come here to play a game.
Okay. I'm Feng Taiyuk.
Braggart. Humility doesn't run in your family.
Seems to be a big problem in your family. Come on, let's get going. Your husband's a fool.
So they do have this kind of really fun, interesting fight, and this is apparently the bit.
You have very good footwork.
Only the best.
Like, so later on she says, oh, it's when our legs are intertwined and I knew. That is a bit of a lesbian thing. You know, you have a band called the Scissor Sisters. So it sort of seems like there's going to be like some hot lesbian action going on at some point. But there never really is. I kind of feel like it's really quite problematic the way that it plays out, because so we've got this next bit where let me just say, yeah, scene 9. We're kind of invited to laugh at how silly she is for believing that this is a man that she's in love with. So we have this bit where the mother is trying to rescue her son, Fong Yosuk from Tiger Loo, and Siwon's here, that's Tiger Loo's wife, Siwon, and again she's kind of manning up a little bit, and it's all kind of,
Mom, I don't think this is such a good
it's
plan.
pretty good. It's quite funny and stuff. And look, big dogs.
Hurry, Mom. I think they're getting closer. I'll try to avert them.
Okay.
Stop now, or they'll go for you. Now, what are you doing?
Get away!
Wait a minute. Taeyuk? Is it you?
Yes, I must talk to you. But if the dogs keep barking, I won't be able to stay.
Oh, all right. I see. Now stop that. Get over here. Hurry up. Come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on. Taeyuk.
Stop, madam. We cannot be together right now. From the first moment, I knew that I'd never find another person I could love like you. Alas, it was like a dream come true. So I wrote this poem. Two rivers, sometimes, when they come together, a perfect harmony of strength and beauty is born. But then, they must leave each other behind to join the sea.
Your words are sweet.
Madam, are you all right?
I'd have to go. Don't say anything. I'll be back when I can.
Taeyuk.
Mistress, do you need help? Huh?
I'm all right. Just leave me alone. Just go away.
Okay, so really not comfortable with that. So I can understand how Fong So-young's mother would do that in a pinch kind of thing, because she's in a bit of a tricky situation. But I'm really not comfortable with the way that it's obvious that the lie about her being a man is being carried on, and Siwon is being made to look really silly, and she's turned into this like silly woman because she's all flustered about this man who's actually a woman and she doesn't know, and how silly she is. Really don't like that. And it's okay, so I'm gonna thing is that there's this tendency in the wider culture to erase lesbians, basically, or try to erase lesbians, erase the idea that women might actually be attracted to other women, and that's kind of been played out here. So this woman is in love with another woman, but only because she thinks it's a man, and that's just like, that is a way of kind of circumventing this idea that women could maybe love other women. I don't really like that. And it is kind of it's part of that male-centric culture thing, like everybody just wants to fuck men, basically. I mean, this is why you get in these homophobic jokes about gay men, with the bums against the wall, corks up your bottom and stuff like that, because they're all just desperate to shag every man they see. It's just, that's just really bad. And then with lesbians, it's always like, well, I just really want a man to show them how it's properly done. It's just so annoying, and I feel like that really plays into it. But I also feel like this is something that plays out across the films. So there's another film called Twin Warriors, where it's two men. It's actually Jet Li again, and they're two men, and they blatantly have this really homoerotic thing going on. It's this homoerotic subtext that is, it's almost not subtext really. It's so blatant that it's really homoerotic. But the thing is, they know that they're men. They both know that they're men. It's not like one of them thinks he's in love with a woman. They both know, and it's all part of this wider thing, this idea that everybody just wants to shag men. It is just ridiculous. And so that's why I'm really not comfortable with the way that that kind of was continued pretty much throughout the film, except the end, where it kind of goes a bit strange. So, I hope I get the right scene this time. No, not that one. Let's go to the menu. Scene selection. Okay, so it is 18. Okay, don't we have to rewind it a bit apparently?
Let's sleep until I see you. So you...
Okay, so we're coming to another bit that's really, really annoying about this, which is that Soo-won dies. Okay, and this is another thing that happens in films and on screen a lot with lesbians. They die. They get punished for being
Come on, tell her
loving
the
women.
Sorry, I got
That's
it.
what
He said
happens.
it came to him in a dream. A big fish told him to learn to swim at Pishu.
Sorry. Rewounds too much. But anyway, she got shot by the governor, and so now she's having some sort of a fever, or she's got some sort of infection that she's dying of, and so now she's being taken back into the boat. They did take her out of the boat earlier because Tiger was, I'm not staying with you dirty little people. And oh look, he's having a bad time. So we have this scene here where Soo-won and the woman that she loves are back together on her deathbed. And she chucks everyone else out, which is kind of fair enough. Although she chucks her husband out as well. Don't really get that. But anyway, I'll let you watch this.
Please help me.
Quiet.
I miss Tayo.
But, dear lady, Tayuk has returned to you.
Please, recite a poem.
Sometime in autumn, a tiny leaf falls to the ground and brings a big snow for eternity.
But you're here, Tayo.
Yes.
I'll always be by your side. In our next life, real, no matter what.
So
Please, sir. Take my umbrella.
Okay, so that's kind of odd, given that throughout the film she is apparently Soo-won has apparently believed that she's in love with the man all that time, and you never get any indication that Fong So-yuk's mother might actually love her back, but that scene is kind of goes against that, I feel. I mean, she chucks out for everyone, including Soo-won's husband, and to be honest, I don't think Soo-won's husband, Tiger Loo, is a good person to have at your deathbed. Whoever you might be, frankly, he'd probably be going on at her about, you know, what a great husband he'd always been to her or something while she was dying, and expecting her to still validate his brilliance on her deathbed or something. So, like, I think it was, in a way, it was kind of fair enough for her to chuck him out, but it was kind of strange how she did that. And then Si-won says, I miss Tae-yuk, like, she kind of knows that really this woman was actually Tae-yuk, this man that she thought she, you know, this person that she was in love with, that she thought was a man. Maybe she actually knew all along that this was a woman that she was in love with. And you sort of see the way that Fong So-yuk's mother deals with that, and it's like she actually really cares about this woman, and, you know, the way that she's affected when she dies and stuff. It's a bit confusing considering what's gone on before, but I think it's kind of interesting, and it's another thing that could be open to further interpretation in a future film, I think. So it's like, it is quite annoying. It's so annoying that this woman is basically being punished for loving a woman by dying. And I guess, you know, if Fong So-yuk's mother had loved her back, she'd have had to die too, because, like, you know, she's the only main character that dies in that, okay? It could have been, like, you know, could have been Tiger Lee that died. He deserved it a lot more. We'd have all been happy to see him go a lot more quickly than anyone else in that. But no, it's this woman that died. And it's because she's a lesbian. You have to punish women for loving a woman. And it's kind of a thing. And I really, it's just so annoying. So it's just all these... so it kind of started off quite hopefully for me, but then it kind of got weird and annoying. And I really am very annoyed about it. But you do sort of wonder if maybe, like, in the future, she could, you know, Fong So-yuk's mother could find another woman and maybe go with her. Especially considering she is in an abusive relationship. Now, oh my god, I'm going to just play you this one. Alright, so, there's actually only a couple of scenes where you have this kind of abusive relationship played out.
We can't tell anyone we spent the day in jail. Don't worry. He's right. My parents will be mad. Relax.
So you kind of have this sort of interesting little scene in the shop where she works. So she obviously is the one who runs the shop, and it's actually the case that they have this business together. And but she's the one who's stuck in the shop all day. She's obviously kind of bored.
I wonder how I look.
Hello there. So sorry, it's just your beauty. It distracted me.
Oh my.
And your glasses are so unusual. Could you show me this fabric? Right here.
That one, huh?
Yes.
What a cheapskate.
Here. That's the one.
I got it. How long?
Just a little bit. Right there. Right about there.
There?
Well, yes.
There.
Right, that's right. Yes, that's
Sure?
about right. Yes.
Sure small.
Wait! He's a thief!
You're late.
Mom, I'm serious. He's stealing. Mom, hey, you look great.
Get to work. Now.
Okay. Is he your son?
Oh, Chinese boys today. Is this my fabric?
You're not blind. You can see.
Of course I can. How do you suppose I hit you?
Well, I better get going. Bye. Here. Mom, are you an assassin?
He's okay. The fruit's not ripe.
Really?
See? It barely pierced the apple.
Easy, easy, easy. Whoa, 3 inches. It almost went through all the way.
I must be slipping.
She's crazy.
Okay, let's go home.
Mom, it's the second time this week. This will get us in trouble.
Not if we don't tell your father it won't.
Hey, Mom,
I met a beautiful girl today. Oh, she's great.
Really?
What eyes.
Maybe we'll take tomorrow off.
Now I'm in trouble.
Young master, I have bad news. The house is full of people.
Who are they?
It's the Mandarin and all of his emissaries.
You're right. That is bad news.
What's the matter?
Well, I was in a fight today.
Fine. Let me do the talking.
Esteemed Governor, wise councilman, I'll settle this matter.
Mr. Fong, you are very honorable.
I'm quite ashamed.
I think they both need to be punished.
I assure you, I'll take care of this matter.
Oh, what a wonderful surprise. Most esteemed governor and loyal friends. Let me prepare a meal in honor of your presence.
Such dishonor. Today, you almost killed our customer.
What?
That's right. And her swordplay scared my wife and made her cry.
He's right. And that cloth my wife bought, it fell apart before she got home.
Yeah.
And she calls me an old goat. Yes,
Yes,
true.
that's right. So explain yourself.
You'll hit me even if I do.
Baku, a fresh stick.
I'm ready.
Please, master.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Please, Dad, no. Not Mom. Hit me.
He loves you, doesn't he?
Is this the home of Fong Sayuk? Yep, that's him. Now, arrest him.
What's going on?
Today I arrested him for fighting. At the jailhouse, he gave me a false name.
You lying little...
Ooh, ow. That hurts.
It would have been a lot worse if I hadn't shielded you.
Mom, you're so good at kung fu. Why do you let him beat you up like that?
Your father's pride is bigger than mine. And besides, he's always careful not to hurt me.
What did I do now?
Good night.
Good night, Dad.
He learns his fighting from you. He's not a boy anymore. It's time he learned to stay out of trouble. Are you listening to what I'm saying?
All you care about is business and the idle gossip of our neighbors. I have feelings too. Every day is the same. You don't care about me. And you're always late for dinner.
What's the matter?
Oh, forget it.
I need you.
No, you don't. You don't mean it.
And the little bird flew away and left her poor lover alone. And his heart was broken, for only she could make him happy.
His poetry makes me tingle all over.
Are you still angry with me? Did you like my poem?
Yeah.
Then follow me. It's time for bed.
All right.
Okay, so that's problematic. Okay, so yeah, that's just like there's just so much that's actually really wrong with that. I mean, he's obviously, you know, Fong Sayuk's father is just generally pretty brutal. I mean, he hits the seventh first. He just hits everyone, and you know, he hits his wife. And it's like, okay, so I guess I was saying, it is not the fact that you see domestic abuse in this film that concerns me. It's the way that it's dealt with. So, I mean, this is actually a pretty realistic representation of an abusive relationship. So what you see there is her kind of making excuses for him, you know, saying his pride is bigger than mine, even though she's really good at kung fu and presumably she could actually stop him from doing that. she doesn't because she's concerned about, you know, his male fragility. Jesus Christ. And but it's, you know, it's kind of how that all works. And then, you know, she also says that well, he's always careful not to hurt me, you know, face covers in bruises. But, you know, she's probably just kind of telling us, well, he hasn't broken my arm, so it's not too bad, really. It could be worse. Those are the kind of excuses that tend to be made by women who are being abused, or, you know, people who are being abused by someone. And then you've got that thing with the poetry and the fact that, yeah, he obviously uses the poetry as a way of pulling on her emotionally, and sex, like blatantly they're going to have sex, and it's his kind of way of making up for or making her feel better about the fact that he's just given her a beating, and her son, you know. And it's just it. So I don't know, like, as far as it goes, that's not the problem. The problem is that it is kind of, that relationship is treated as though it's kind of, well, that's acceptable. Like, it's never really interrogated much in the film. I think we need scene 13. So, we have a bit. It's just, this is the only other time it comes up, but it's still, this bothers me quite a lot as well.
Sayuk, will you follow?
Forget it, Dad. I watched my back. What about Mom? Your face is red. Oh, Ma. What's the matter?
It's your father. His poetry is so beautiful. I don't know why it seems to make me so happy.
Oh, that's so wonderful.
It's no joke. I'm serious.
Wow.
It makes me happy.
What a mystery.
Sayuk! Son, you can leave now.
Father, I don't want to leave you.
Okay, so that's quite discomforting. Like, even if it was a standalone scene, that would be quite discomforting, because, yeah, obviously they've just been having sex. That's why he's got a red face, and yeah, they had to run off ahead to escape the commander, and Feng Siyuk had, you know, been holding off the evil governor so that everyone else could get away, and then he's followed on. And, yeah, so it's like, and she's crying, and the thing is, you know, they're doing the poetry thing, and it's like, the thing is, like, if I've been crying after having sex, it's not been good, okay? It's there's been some abusive thing going on. And so even if it was just a standalone thing, that would be very discomforting for me to watch. But we've already established in the other scene that he does the you know, he gives her a beating, there's a pattern. She gets a beating, he does the poetry, and then there's the sex. And it just kind of, it's just, it just feels really nasty and horrid to me to sort of see that, particularly after the early scene. And you can sort of see how and I guess, like, she is really conflicted about it, because she's saying, you know, this is no joke, it makes me happy, and it's really horrible that it makes me happy. And yeah, and that's kind of how abusive relationships work, you know. I mean, he's still got that emotional pull over her, and he totally abuses it. And, you know, you don't know what's happened. And the thing is, you know, there was this thing where they'd followed him to this revolutionary hideaway when I guess they weren't supposed to, or something like that. And maybe when they got there, she looked at him in the wrong way or something, and so when they escaped, he gave her a beating because he was pissed off with her or something. Anyway, abusive people don't need a reason, really. They'll just make something up. So it's just like, yeah, I don't really. It's quite problematic. So anyway, I don't really, like I said, I don't have a problem with the fact that we see domestic abuse in this. What I have a problem with is that, you know, he's kind of looking at it as like this beautiful thing, and it's really not. And it's never really interrogated properly. You don't see any kind of discussion about his motives, about Fong Suk's father's motives or anything like that. It's or what's going on in his head, why he thinks it's okay, anything like that. And there's no kind of discussion about her leaving him or anything like that. It's deeply problematic. But I do think it is something that I'd actually encourage, that kind of thing being this, you know, domestic abuse and stuff being in films, including in martial arts films, because it is a thing that happens. And when you sort of, and it's like with when I was talking about rape in the last one, you know, if you will get people, feminists, who will say you shouldn't show this in a film or in a series because it just makes women look like victims. Well, the problem is women quite often are abused. They are victims quite a lot of the time, you know, and it needs to be discussed. And if you're not prepared to see this, you might not even know that it's bad or wrong or anything like that. So, like, there's a storyline, long-term storyline in The Archers, which is a everyday tale of country folk. It's a radio soap that I listen to, and to me it's kind of funny because I grew up in North Norfolk villages, and this village is nothing like any of the villages I grew up in. It's kind of this delightful fantasy land to me. It's sort of kind of funny, but they do deal with stuff, and because it's a very long-term thing. Okay, it's like 13 minutes a day, 5 days a week, but they did have this storyline that went on for 2.5-3 years about coercive control and how it kind of, you know, this kind of creeping nature of how it starts and how it kind of gradually builds up, and the terror is not instant. It's kind of very gradual and creeping until you get to the point where, you know, the woman's stabbing her husband and desperate to leave, and then is in court for attempted murder. And you know, and that all kind of worked out eventually fairly, you know, it didn't work out. I mean, she got off and she's now single again and probably never going to be in a relationship again. But anyway, the point is that it did depict the way that abusive relationships kind of build up. You know, it's not like Fong Soyuk's father started off by hitting his wife. You know, he started off with poetry. You know, they build up these relationships with their people that they're abusing, abusive people. And they do it very deliberately because it makes it a lot harder for the people, women usually, to just leave because they feel like they owe them and they feel dependent on them. They feel like they don't want to hurt them. And it's a very deliberate thing that they do. And certainly, like with the Archer storyline, it was a lot of, you know, you got plenty of women who suddenly like were writing in anonymously saying, God, I've just realised I'm in a really bad, coercively controlling relationship. And they just didn't even know, you know, because you kind of, because when you're in that situation, it's often kind of normalised, and you don't, or maybe you think that you specifically deserve it or something like that, and you don't necessarily realise that it's just it is actually a thing that happens, and it has this kind of specific pattern and stuff like that. So I do think that this is something that there's no reason it shouldn't be in a film. And there's no reason it shouldn't be explored in other films and stuff like that. And I wouldn't expect the whole of domestic abuse and bad lesbian tropes to be sold in one film. But I do think it could have been done with better in this. It really could have, because it is literally just, you see that there is this abusive relationship, but it's apparently okay. And it feels like this guy, his father, Fong Suk's father, is getting a free pass, essentially, because he's like this great revolutionary fighter, and therefore it's somehow okay, or maybe he has this need, I don't know. It's just like, but this is the kind of thing that happens, you know. So, like, even today, we've had all this Me Too stuff and various other things about abusive behaviour becoming more widely recognised and more widely recognised as wrong. But I mean, you still got like Louis C.K. who admitted to masturbating in front of women going out and making a comedy career out of complaining about woke people. You know, it's just like these people, they don't get their comeuppance very often. And it's not like I think there should necessarily be comeuppance. I mean, it's quite difficult because, you know, we do need to find ways of dealing with these people, but at the moment, there's not that many ways of dealing with it. I mean, there's not even much admittance that these problems are happening, but you know, there's certainly like any kind of reform or counselling of these abusive people, usually men, or it's very haphazard. And to be honest, there's a possibility that actually when you just get these men together and they discuss their abusive behaviour, they just learn better about how to be abusive. So it's quite a tricky one, but I think it's through films and maybe even a series, this kind of thing can be discussed and explored a lot more easily, and it's quite obvious the authorities are failing horrendously. And I don't think you can really, well, I don't think you should judge von Soek's mother for sticking with this man. I mean, for a start, you know, he's using all of the normal kind of ways of keeping her with him, and, you know, she's obviously bored with being in this shop, but she's kind of stuck there. She probably, like, if she were to try to leave, there's probably nowhere she can really go. She's probably got no way of supporting herself. Maybe she could leave with him and then he could subsequently support her. But, you know, it would be very difficult for her. You know, there wouldn't be, there's very unlikely to be the support out there, and she would face a huge amount of stigma if she left him. So it's a very difficult thing there. And like today, okay, if I was living with an abusive partner, I could not just up and leave because I do not have the financial means to do that. And it does take money to go and, like, find another place to rent. And, you know, even within this city I'd find that hard. And, you know, and ideally if you're trying to escape an abusive partner, you kind of want some distance. So, you know, move it to another city, forget it. It's just no way. So, I mean, the support systems are not there. You know, like, well, the benefit system is just very punitive. There's the domestic abuse shelters have been cut quite a lot, and they weren't even very good they weren't that enough in the first place, really. Social services and police aren't really great at dealing with this stuff. This is just like, so we kind of do need to have this conversation, and it's unfortunate because there are allegedly processes there, but they're not working and they're not dealing with the situation properly. And also you've got this wider cultural problem where people just don't really understand domestic abuse enough. So I do think there is a place for discussing this, just not like that. It's quite difficult. And another thing about her leaving him, okay, so her kung fu is good. Okay, she could possibly, you know, defend herself against him, stuff like that. But how good is her kung fu if she's, like, asleep and he's standing over a big fucking sword, you know? And if she was, you know, it's kind of the worst time for women in particular when they leave their abusive partners, when people leave their abusive partners. Well, that is actually the worst time. That is the time when an abusive partner is most likely to attempt to kill their partner that they've been abusing for however long. So, you know, maybe she could leave him, maybe she could fight him, but he's not going to fight fair. Abusive people are not interested in fighting fair. So it's like, yeah, okay, so I would normally be relatively comfortable going out on my own or going to a club or whatever, but I'd be careful about what drinks I was accepting, because, yeah, my kung fu might be alright, but it's not going to be any good if I'm dosed up with Rohypnol. So, you know, you kind of have to remember that while she is good at kung fu, it's kind of, the protection that affords her is limited, essentially. So there always is, yeah, domestic abuse is kind of a complex and difficult problem. And I think there is a bit of a tendency to look for easy answers, and there really aren't that many, unfortunately. But I think another thing I want to say about this is that she'd probably be better at being a revolutionary fighter than her husband. But he's the one, I mean, he's a miserable git, honestly. And she's cleverer than him, and she's funnier than him, and she's lively. You know, she'd probably do a better job of being a revolutionary leader than him. And it's not just like, you know, the downers is men. Like, they make a joke out of it at the end. It's not just him acting badly or anything. That is really how he is. And it seems kind of sad that, you know, because she's married to this man, the man is the one that gets to go off to having fun doing the revolutionary activities, and she's stuck in the shop running the business for him, essentially. And she's obviously, yeah, you can see from that scene, she's kind of bored with it, and she could do with having a bit more fun, really, in her life, and she'd probably, you know, be much better at the revolutionary thing than him. But because she's the woman, and he's an abusive bastard who can't handle it if a woman's better than him, he's the one who gets to be the revolutionary leader. And yeah, that kind of sucks, really. So, okay, so I feel like this is actually another thing that could be explored in future film, or maybe even a series. So it's like I said earlier, you know, you have at the very end Fong Yo-suk going off with this Chan guy who we don't really know what he's intending, but he obviously wants revolution, but maybe he doesn't really want to replace a brutal emperor with another brutal emperor, you know. Maybe what he'd actually like is something different. There's plenty of scope for exploring that. Obviously, as an anarchist, I have my views on what should happen, but, you know, these things, you know, but what do you replace an emperor with? I think that's worth exploring. And within that, you could explore further this. You could maybe redeem this film by having, like, the lesbian thing dealt with a lot better. So maybe, you know, Fong So-yuk's mother could find a lovely woman, and they could get together and not die, but live happily ever after, and maybe be great revolutionary leaders themselves, and fuck him. He can bugger off. And, yeah, and then that could be quite cool. And then, you know, his new bride, I mean, she's kind of, she seems kind of nice, but she's that kind of drippy, decorative type. So, but, you know, her mother, Si-won, was a great fighter. So there's no reason why her, along with Fong So-yuk, couldn't just, you know, be great revolutionary fighters together as well. You know, she could maybe even be better than him, just like his mother is better than his father. You never know. So yeah, I mean, okay, so I have talked a lot about the domestic abuse and the bad lesbian tropes, but I do feel like, but they're not things that dominate the film. They were just kind of really niggling, annoying things. And like I said, you know, like I said before, I want these films to be better and do things better. And, you know, it could be better in a future film, but it doesn't have to dominate. And yeah, I would still be quite happy to, you know, show this at a martial arts film night or other, you know. But it'd be nice to be able to follow that with like a sequel that, you know, deals with all these things in a way that would appeal quite happily to your average left tuber. Till next time.